Hi, I'm David Tepfer of The Screaming Brain, and today I'm here to show you how to play our new game, The Exorcism at the House of Monkton Falls. The Exorcism at the House of Monkton Falls is a 2 to 4 player cooperative game where you and your friends are taking on the role of paranormal investigators trying to exorcise an evil spirit from a haunted house. You'll be exploring the various rooms of the haunted house, collecting tools, completing tasks, and all the while trying to avoid the evil spirit that's trying to capture you, and prevent that evil spirit from taking over too much of the house and transporting it to the spirit realm. The Exorcism at the House of Monkton Falls is coming to Kickstarter on April 13th, Friday the 13th, and we'd love to see your support. Anyway, let's go down to the tabletop and let me show you exactly how to play. To play a game of The Exorcism at the House of Monkton Falls, you must first create the house that you and your friends will be playing through. Locate the oversized attic card, which features a score tracker, and place it at the top of your play area. Next, take the deck of room cards, which you can identify by looking at the red door on their backing, and find the foyer card. The foyer card is going to be the front door of our house, and we'll be placing it at the bottom of our play area. Next, take the locked room cards, which have a locked door symbol on the back of them, and randomly draw 5 cards from the deck, making sure not to look at the cards, as these are chosen randomly each game. And you will add these 5 cards to our room deck. We're going to shuffle these cards together to create the full deck of cards we'll use to create our house. Each time you play a game of Monkton Falls, the locations and lock cards are randomized each time. Once you feel like you have those cards shuffled well enough, we can go ahead and start playing them down on the table. Make sure to play any locked room cards face down, as they won't be available at the beginning of the game and will have to be unlocked later over play. Now we're going to lay these out in a 3-5-5-3 grid. So we're going to take the room cards, making sure to flip them as we place them down, and start our first row. So there is the first row there. So now we're going to be doing a 5 room across. So starting with a locked room card, placing it face down. And then the last row of 3 on top. Okay, now that our house is created, we can go ahead and start putting the other decks onto the table. Now that the house is set up, we'll be placing the remaining decks and components around the house and in reach of all of the other players. First, I'm going to start by placing these smaller tool decks, which feature a single icon in the center and this kind of border around it, and placing it on the left side of the house. Now, it doesn't matter which order you place these decks, as long as they're in reach of all players or in reach of a player who doesn't mind handing these cards out. So, placing the 5 decks here, we have the key cards, weapon cards, holy relics, occult tools, and detection tools. And at the bottom of this, I'm also going to be playing the deck of plan cards. Below these, we can also place the deck of shrouded cards. These are kind of these double-sided cloud cards that will come into play later in the game. On the right side of the house, we'll be placing the remaining decks and tokens. First, I'll be placing the Haunt deck, which is this square deck of cards featuring a skull on the back of them, and placing it up by the attic card at the top of the house. Next, I'll take the task cards, which has this house image on the back of it, and placing the top 3 of this deck face up next to the house, and taking the remaining and placing them face down in the deck. Then, I will take the pile of black darkness tokens and place them up above the task deck, and the white or wood-colored exorcism tokens, and placing them next to those. Finally, we'll be taking the round clock token and placing it at the top of the house, along with the darkness token. The darkness token gets placed at the top right of the clock, starting on the first 1 space. Next, we take the 8 time dice and place them into each of the square spaces on the time clock. making sure that we take the 6 face of each die and placing that face up. As we play over the course of the game, we'll be counting down these dice from 6 to 1 and then discarding them as we finish the time. Now that we've set up the house, each player will randomly receive one of the 8 investigator cards and their player pawns. Shuffle the 8 investigator cards and randomly deal 1 to each player. For this example, we're going to be playing a 2-player game, so we'll shuffle these and take the bottom 2 cards of the deck. So in this case, we're going to be playing as the doctor and the journalist. I'm going to take these 2 character cards and set them aside for now. Then shuffle the remaining character cards once again, and take 3 of these at random and place them below the foyer. These are going to be our lookout characters. Now that those characters are placed, we're going to take their player pawns, so the architect's pawn right there, the bodyguard's pawn, and the median's pawn, and placing them up on their characters. We're going to take our first 2 characters, putting them to the sides, and placing their pawns directly next to them. Finally, each player in the game will receive a turn order card that will give them a guide to the steps of the game and the actions that they can perform. Now that the board and all of the players have been set up, we can take the ghost pawns and add them to the game. There are 3 ghost pawns in the game: a red pawn, a black pawn, and a white pawn. We start the game only with the black pawn in the attic space, but over the course of the game, as we draw cards from the haunt deck, the red and white pawn will be added as well. Now that the ghost is in the house, we can add the players. At the back of each player's card is their starting location. So we'll remove that pawn there, and let's take a look. The journalist's starting location is the basement. So we'll be taking the journalist's pawn, going over to the basement card, and placing her pawn on top. The doctor, we take his pawn, the doctor's starting location is the bathroom. So we'll take the doctor's pawn, locate the bathroom card, and place him on the room. And that's it. Now that all of the pawns are on the board and the rooms are placed in the house, we are all set up and ready to play. Before the first player can take their turn, we first have to determine how haunted the house is when we first arrive. To do that, we'll be drawing the top 6 cards of the haunt deck. One at a time, draw the top card of the haunt deck and place a number of darkness tokens equal to the number of rooms that share the same die value. On each haunt card, there are 2 bits of information. There are the 3 color-coded arrows on the card, and there is the die and die value on the card. We'll be placing 1 black darkness token on each room that shares the die value and icon as the card that was drawn. So, in this instance, since we drew a 1, we would search the house for any room that shares that 1 die icon and place a black token on it. So, looking at the house, we can see that the basement has a 1 die icon. So we will take one of the black cubes and place it on there. And the bedroom card also has a 1 die icon on it. So we'll take a second cube and place it on there. In the initial setup of the house, there are 2 room cards for every 1 die value. As locked room cards are open, that number can increase. So now that we've placed those 2 icons, we will draw the next card of the darkness deck. In this case, we reveal a 6. So once again, we can take 2 darkness tokens and place them on the rooms with the corresponding die. So in this instance, we can see that the library and the kitchen would receive darkness tokens. Next, we have a 5. So we take 2 more, and this time we'll be placing these on the playroom and onto the garage. For our 4th card, we have a 4. So again, placing tokens on the rooms with 4s. We'll be placing on the living room and placing on to the office. Let's see, on our 5th card, we draw a darkness card. Now, the rules for the darkness cards I'll be explaining as we go over the turns, but if one is drawn during this initial haunt setup, they are ignored and you would draw a new card. So we'll ignore that one and draw our new card for the 5th placement. So on that we draw a 3. So we'll be placing darkness icon on the foyer and onto the bathroom. And now for the last darkness, we draw a 2. Taking 2 more, drawing onto the kids' room and onto the hidden study. Now in this instance, we didn't draw any duplicates from the haunt deck for this initial haunt setup, but if you would happen to draw 2 cards with the same die icon, you would instead place two darkness tokens onto that card instead of 1. So that's it for the initial haunt. So next we'll go over the turns. Each player's turn is broken down into 2 main phases. The phase where the house and ghosts will act, and then the phase where the players can take their actions. First, at the start of each player's turn, we will reduce the time dice by 1 pip, in this case, reducing the 6 to a 5. There are 8 time dice on the clock token at the top left corner of the board. Each die represents 1 hour, and each pip represents 10 minutes. We reduce the top leftmost die by 1 pip to show that 10 minutes is passing over the course of this player's turn. We keep track of the passage of time to show how many action players have taken and how much time they have left to exorcise the ghosts and escape the house. If time runs out before the ghosts are exorcised and the players escape, they are locked in the house forever and lose the game. Next, we will draw the top card of the haunt deck. The haunt deck shows where the ghosts move in the house and where we place new darkness tokens. However, we only start drawing these haunt cards at the start of the 2nd round of play, so we will ignore them for now. Next is the player's turn to take their actions. While most of the actions available to players depend on the room they are in, many are universal. On your turn, you can take up to 3 actions. You can move up to 2 spaces, like this. 1, 2. But note that you can never move diagonally. I can trade any number of tool cards with the player in the same room or adjacent to me. I can complete a task card in my hand. I can play a plan card in my hand. I can remove one of these black darkness tokens from the room I am in, or a shrouded card on the room I'm in. Or lastly, I can use the action of the room that my player pawn is standing in. Okay, now that we've gone over the different parts of the turn, I'm going to take a few turns and see how it plays out. So, as I showed before, we've already reduced the time dice by 1. We didn't draw any haunt cards because it's still the first turn, so I can go straight into my actions. So, starting with the journals, I can take 2 actions. So as my first action, I'll move 2 spaces. So I'll move 1 to the playroom and 2 to the garage. Now also note that I can't stop halfway through my movement to perform an action. I have to complete the full movement before I can stop into a room. As my second action, I will use the garage. Now on the garage card, I have the action to gain 3 key cards. Now keys are one of the tool cards that we have access to that can either be used to complete a task or to unlock one of the locked room cards in the house. Now looking at the tasks available to us, there aren't any that require keys at the moment, but right now, since it is the closest room card to me that lets me pick up tools, I'm going to go ahead and do that anyway. So I'm going to go over to the pile of tool cards over here, and I'm going to grab 3 of these keys. So 1, 2, and 3. So I'll grab these 3 and place them down here over by my character card. Okay, so that was my second action. And now as my third action, I am actually going to take another 3 keys. Now in a game, you can perform any action any number of times. So that means, like in this instance, I can use the garage's action twice in a row. I could perform a movement 3 times if I needed to sprint across the house, or any variety. So those are my 3 actions. So that will end my turn and will pass over to the other character, the Doctor. So at the beginning of the Doctor's turn, we'll go back up to the clock and reduce the time by 1 pip, breaking that down to 4. We're still in the first round of play, so we ignore the haunt deck and can go straight into the doctor's actions. Now for the doctor's actions, I am first going to remove this darkness token from the bathroom. Now it isn't really much of a risk right now, but if we ever get 4 of these darkness tokens onto a single room, we have to place a shrouded room card. And what will happen is we'll actually take the shrouded room card and place it onto the room. If that happens, we lose the ability to use the action in that room unless we go there and actually remove it as one of our actions. Although the shrouded room cards are finite, so if we ever lose more than 8 of the rooms of the manor, we lose the game, as there's too much of the house taken over by the spirit. So that was my first action. My second action will be able to move 1 space to the living room, and I'll use the living room's action as my last. And the living room's action is to gain an active task card. So I'm going to go over to the task cards, and we have 3 face-up task cards. These are the ones that are available to us. Now, on each task card, it's basically broken down into 2 parts. You have the to complete, which are the tools that are required to complete the task, and there is the reward. The reward is basically the number of exorcism tokens we'll get for completing it, as well as any other rewards. So in the instance of this to study Monkton history, we would also gain an ongoing ability. And this ongoing ability is each time I complete an investigatory task, I can gain another task. On each task card, there's also a secondary type. In this instance, this is an investigatory task. So this would qualify for its own ability. There are 5 different types of tasks in all, and they all kind of play off of each other as well as characters and other abilities. So what I think I'll do, because Study Monkton History is pretty easy to complete, requiring only 2 tasks, I think I'll take this one. So I'll grab this card and bring it into my hand, or just kind of place it next to my character card for now. Now that we've taken one of those task cards, we take a new one from the deck to replace it. Okay, so that was my third action with the doctor. So now we go on to the second round of play. We go up to the clock in the top left corner and reduce this by 1 more pip. So we now have 7.5 hours left to exorcise the ghosts in the house and escape. So now, since this is the second round of play, we will be drawing the first haunt card of the deck. So we take the top card off and reveal that. Okay, like I said before, there are 2 main pieces of information on this card. There's where we place a new darkness token and how the ghosts move. So first, I'll take 2 darkness tokens and place them on all of the rooms in the house that have the 2 die icon. So in this instance, we'll be placing it on the kids' room and onto the hidden study. Next, we'll be moving any of the ghosts in the house. Now, we only start with the black ghost pawn in the house at first, so we'll be ignoring the red and white arrows as those ghosts are not currently in play. So, according to the card, we move the black ghost pawn down. Now, each card has a ghost move only 1 space, but as time goes on, we will be drawing more and more haunt cards, allowing the ghosts to move further. So, we take the black ghost pawn and we move it down 1 space onto that locked room. Okay, now that the house and ghosts have gone, it's the journalist's turn to act. So, now that I have those 6 tool cards on the table, I think I want to go and use those to start opening a couple of those locked rooms. So, as my first action, I will move 2 spaces, going 1 to the library, 2 to the bedroom, and then use my second action to move another 2 spaces. This will get me to the hidden study. And now I will use as my last action the hidden studies ability, which is to spend 4 keys and unlock a locked room. So I'll take 4 of the key tool cards that I had gained, those 4, and I'll place these back onto the deck. And now I can choose one of the locked room cards in the house to flip over and reveal. Now I don't know what those cards are as they're randomized with each play, so right now I will just try and flip over one that is relatively close to me and I can try and get to use. So let's see, we'll flip this one over and see what we have. So in this case, I have opened the bar. Now the bar's action is to gain a weapon card and a key card. Now this is really valuable because normally the only place in the house that you can get weapons is at the kitchen, which gives you one weapon card. And now the bar will give me access to gain one weapon card and a key, which basically makes that action more valuable than just going to the kitchen alone. It also now gives me some flexibility of where I can be in the house to gain that tool. Okay, so that was my third action. So now I will end my turn and pass it on to the doctor. So, at the beginning of the doctor's turn, we'll move this down to 2, showing that another 10 minutes has gone by, and reveal the next card in the haunt deck. So we'll flip this over. And okay, so we'll place a darkness token on each room with a 3. So that will be 1 darkness token on the foyer and 1 onto the bathroom. Okay, checking the haunt card again, we can see that the black arrow is pointing left, which means that the black ghost pawn will be moving left into the corner here. Okay, so now it is time for the doctor to take his actions. So, now that I have this task card, I have a good idea of what tools I need to collect. In this instance, it's an occult tool and a holy relic. So I'm going to be wanting to move in the house in a way to start getting me some of those items. So looking around to see what I'm close to, I can actually see that below me are the bedroom and the library, which have those tools. So I'll use my first action to move down to the library and use the library's action to gain an occult tool card. So I'll go over here, grab this pentagram symboled card for the occult tool, and place that next to my character card. And then as my third action, I'll move over to the bedroom. That way, at the start of my next turn with the doctor, he's already in place to pick up the 2 holy relics, so I'll be able to use that action and then complete the task that I'm holding in my hand, because it only requires 1 occult tool and 1 holy relic. Okay. So now we're passing back to the journalist. So we'll reduce the time die by 1 more pip, down to 1, and draw the next haunt card. Let's see. Okay, so this is a darkness card. So the darkness card basically is saying that the ghosts in the house are getting angrier and angrier with us, knowing what we're trying to do, and are getting stronger because of it. Each time you draw a darkness card, we increase the darkness track by 1, and then we discard this card. The darkness track is this track going around the clock and time dice in the top left corner of the board. You'll notice that there's several numbers going around the clock. These numbers are going to be showing how many haunt cards we draw at the beginning of each player's turn. So, since we did draw a darkness card, we're going to be advancing this token up 1 space. Now, it's still sitting on a number 1, which means we're still only drawing 1 card per player's turn. But over time, and as we go through more and more of these cards, we'll be drawing 2 haunt cards, and maybe even 3 if it gets that far. Okay, so now that we've drawn the darkness card, it's the journalist's turn to act. So, I've just unlocked that room, so what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to go and look at where I am right now. So let's see. So I'm in the hidden study. I have 2 key cards in my hand, which aren't incredibly useful right now. But what I think I'll do is I think I'll move over 1 space into the kids' room and use its action to gain a plan card. Now, plan cards are these red-backed cards over here sitting with the other tool cards that are actually one-time use special abilities. The effects of the plan cards are kind of random, and you never really know what you're going to get, although a lot of them will give you different variations of tool cards and make it easier for you to do some bit of set collection. Okay, I'll draw the top card of the plan deck and see what I get. Okay, in this instance, I get the card Pawn the Loot. Now this lets me gain one of the following sets of tool cards. I can either gain 2 Holy Relics, 2 Detection Tools, or 1 Weapon card. Now I could use my third action to play this immediately, or I can take it into my hand. And I think actually I will take it into my hand and save it for later. So I'm going to place this down next to my character card and with the 2 keys I collected earlier. So instead, I think I'm going to use my third action to move 2 spaces. So 1, 2 to the living room. So then on my next turn, I can get ready to take one of these task cards. Okay, so that's the end of my turn. So I'm going to reduce the time dice by another pip. Although looking at the clock, I can see that there's only one pip left on this top left die. So I can't reduce it any further, so instead I'm going to discard it. So now that I've discarded the die, I can actually see that there is an icon on the space underneath it. There are several of these icons under the dice on the clock. Each one is an action icon. Each time we discard a die and reveal one of these, we take one of our exorcism tokens and place one on each room that is still locked. So on each of these locked rooms, I place on that one, that one, that one, and this one. Now I've already unlocked the bar, so that one won't receive an exorcism token. What this means is now anytime I open one of these locked rooms, I will receive the points on that card in addition to the effects of gaining that new room. Okay, so now I've done the effects of the clock, I can draw the top card of the haunt deck. So let's see. Okay, so I'm going to place 2 exorcism tokens, or darkness tokens, on each room with a 6 icon. So it's going to be going onto the kitchen and onto the library. Okay. And then we look at the arrows on the card, and we see that the ghost is going down again. So we'll move him down 1 space. Okay, so now there's a little bit of danger, because I can see he's 1 space away from both the journalist and the doctor. If a ghost pawn ever lands on a room that one of your pawns is in, he captures you and wounds you. Essentially what that means is that your character, has to be rushed out of the house and rescued. So, let's say, for instance, the ghost had drawn, on the next turn, the ghost draws another downward arrow. So he would move down to the bathroom and wound the doctor. The doctor would then be forced to drop any tool cards he's carrying in the room. So he has this 1 occult tool, so we'd have to drop that into the bedroom that players could later pick up using actions, and he'd be rushed out of the house. So we would take his player pawn, put it on its side down here, along with his character card. I would then have to be rescued by one of our lookout characters, which basically means I would swap out my character for one of them. So let's say in this instance I decided to choose the bodyguard. The bodyguard would then run into the house through the front door, and I would gain his character card as my new character. Now if we ever run out of lookout cards, we immediately lose the game, as there is no friends waiting outside left to help us. But in this instance, since I'm not wounded, I'm actually just going to take back the doctor card and switch all of these back out. Just wanted to show you that as kind of an example to see what would happen in that instance. So I'll place his back out here as well. And that goes back up here. Okay, so now for the doctor's actions. I can take that back. Okay, so as his first action, let's see, I needed those 2 holy relics. So I'm going to use my first action to grab the 2 holy relic cards. So 1 and 2. And then use those to immediately complete the Study Monkton History task. So the Study Monkton History task requires 1 occult tool and 1 holy relic. So I'll take 1 holy relic that I just got, put it back into the pile, and the occult tool I have, and put that back into the pile as well. So I've now completed this task, so I gain its rewards. So the first reward is for 2 exorcism tokens. So I would go over to the pile of exorcism tokens, take 2 of those, and place them onto the score tracker on the edit card, placing 1 and 2, showing how many points we have. Now most times you would discard a task card after completing it, but Study Monkton History has an ongoing ability, so I'll actually keep that and place it next to my doctor card. Okay, and that was my first action. As my second action, I will then move 2 spaces. So let's see. I'm actually going to go back over to the library because I can see with the Ritual Sacrifice card, could be pretty useful to have a couple of occult tools around. So I use my second action and move to the library, and then my last action, I will grab an occult tool. Okay, so that was my last action with Doctor, so now it passes over to the journalist. So reduce the time dice by 1 pip. There we go. And draw the next card from the top of the haunt deck. Let's see. Okay, this is a monster card. Now there are 2 monster cards hidden in the haunt deck. These are basically the cards that will call out the additional pawns that we have sitting to the side. So with the bull monster, we place the red monster pawn on the attic and then discard the card. So we'll place that in there and move the red pawn into the attic space. So now every time we draw a haunt card, we'll be moving both the black pawn and the red pawn because they are now in play. Okay, so now I have my actions. So my journalist who's in the living room, my first action I will actually use to draw the Ritual Sacrifice Task card, which requires 2 occult tools, a detection tool, and a weapon. So I'll grab that and put it down here, kind of all of my other cards. What's going on? Okay. Then for my second action, let's see, looking at what I need for the Ritual Sacrifice, I think I will actually move 2 spaces. So let's see, I'm trying to get over to the office. Okay, so I'll move 1 and 2. And then my last action will be to use the office's action to gain 2 of these detection tools. It's 1 and 2. And I will go and place these next to the rest of my cards. Okay, now it's important to know that it looks like I'm assembling quite a bit of number of tools over here. There's actually no hand limit, so it's kind of like all of your characters are holding a kind of a giant bottomless bag of holding with them. So there's no limit on how many tool cards you can be carrying at any one time. It's just important to remember that if you do ever get wounded, you're going to be dropping all of those cards that you've collected in that room. Okay, so now that the journalist is gone, I will move back over to the doctor. So dropping this time dice by 1 more pip and drawing the next haunt card. Let's see. Okay, so another 2. So we'll take 2 of the darkness tokens and placing them on each room with a 2. So on the hidden study and on the kids room. Okay, then looking at the arrows, the black pawn will be moving to the left and the red pawn would move to the right. Now in this instance, the red pawn can't move to the right because there's no card there. So instead, he'll bump up against the wall and stay where he is. Now there are some additional advanced play rules that give each spirit or monster their own kind of unique play style and changes up how they move. But since in this instance we're playing kind of the basic version, he's just going to stay there as he can't pass through that wall. Okay, so now I'm going to perform the doctor's action. As his first action, he's going to use the library again to get another one of these occult tool cards and place it next to the other one he gained earlier. For his second action, he's going to move 2 spaces, going 1 to the living room and 2 to the playroom. Then, as his third action, he's going to take the 2 occult tools that he's collected already and trade them to the journalist. So since the journalist is in an adjacent space, he can take these 2 tool cards and pass it over to her. So now, all that she needs to complete her Ritual Sacrifice task card is a weapon card, which on her turn, I'll be able to use Pawn the Loot to get one. So that works out really good. Okay, so now the doctor's finished his turn. I'm going to go and reduce the time dice by 1 more pip, giving us 6.5 hours left, and then drawing the next haunt card. So we'll draw this next haunt card, and okay, it's another 2. So we'll take 2 exorcism tokens, or 2 darkness tokens, and be placing them on the 2s. Okay, so these would go onto the hidden study and kids room, but this would be the 4th darkness token on each of those rooms, which means instead of getting a darkness token, we'll remove all of the tokens on the card, placing them back in their piles, doing that for both rooms that have 2s on them. And we'll place a shrouded card on them instead. So with these shrouded room cards, we won't be able to use those actions. We won't be able to use those room actions unless we move to that room and actually use an action to remove it, which is going to slow us down quite a bit. Now, if you're ever in a room when it becomes shrouded, you also get wounded just like as if a ghost landed on the space that you were in. Okay, now to do the ghost movement. So we can see the left arrow for the black pawn, which he cannot move because he's at an edge of the board, and a right arrow for the red pawn. So again, he's in the same situation. Okay, so now we can use the journalist's actions. So for her first action, I'm going to play the Pawn the Loot card. So I'll take this and place it in a little discard pile right over here, and gain a weapon tool card. Putting that with the others. And with my second action, I'll actually go ahead and complete this Ritual Sacrifice Task card. So I'll spend the 2 occult tools that I gained, the 1 detection tool, and the weapon I just got by completing my Pawn the Loot plan card. Okay, now we'll complete the Ritual Sacrifice. Now Ritual Sacrifice doesn't have an ongoing ability, but it actually also gives me back 4 of these occult tool cards. So first thing, I'll add the 3 Exorcism tokens to the point tracker on the attic. So I'll grab these 3, add 1, 2, and 3. And then I will gain the 4 occult tools for completing that. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, great. Put these down by my character. Okay, then as my third action, I'm actually going to use the Journalist's special ability. Now, on the back of every character's card, on this kind of second line in the middle here, you have that character's special action. Now, the Journalist's special action is New Evidence. And what this does is it lets the journalist spend an action to move any other player up to 3 spaces. So what I think I'm going to use is I'm going to use that action to move the Doctor. Now, I'm not going to move him the full 3 spaces, but I'm going to move him over to the living room. So that way he'll be starting on the room card that he wanted to get to be able to pick up one of these task cards. Okay, so I think I'm going to do that, and I'm going to end my turn. Okay, so that's pretty much the entire overview on how to play. Players will be moving through the house, trying to avoid the spirit pawns. Now we have 2 spirit pawns in the house, and trying to complete as many task cards as they can to earn those 30 points before time runs out. And that's how to play The Exorcism at the House of Monkton Falls. I'm David Tepfer, the designer and developer of the game with Screaming Brain, and I just want to say thank you for sitting down and taking time to learn how to play. Now, like I said before, The Exorcism at the House of Monkton Falls is coming to Kickstarter on April 13th, and we would love to have your support. Thank you.